السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله. وبعد. As always, we begin in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal by asking Him to send peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Inshallah, we'll begin today with verse number 28 of Surah al-Mā'idah, and we'll continue for a few verses. Allah Azza wa Jal says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لئن بسط إلي يدك لتقتلني ما أنا بباسط يدي إليك لأقتلك إني أخاف الله رب العالمين إني أريد أن تبوء بإثمي وإثمك فتكون من أصحاب النار وذلك جزاء الظالمين فطوعت له نفسه قتل أخيه فقتله فأصبح من الخاسرين. صدق الله العظيم. As you all recall from Thursday's Tafsir with Sheikh Abdul Rafi, we are now in the story of the first children on earth, the children of Adam alayhi salam. And specifically, of course, the brothers, Qabil and Habil, or as in English they're known, Cain and Abel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked them to make a sacrifice. And we talked on Thursday about what was required for that sacrifice to be accepted. This sincere intention, this wanting to do better and give the best of what you have instead of the least. And in fact, this sacrifice, as we know of Habil, was accepted and Qabil's was not. Abel's sacrifice was accepted, but Cain's was not. And the Mufassirin, they differed about, was it his intention? Was it because of the manner in which he did it? What was the reason for it? But we know that it was not accepted. And this drew jealousy in the heart of Cain. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse number 28, in verse number 27, that he was so upset that his sacrifice was not accepted that he said, I will kill you, to his brother. So he said, I'm going to slay you, I'm going to kill you, because your sacrifice was accepted and mine was not. And we'll talk a little bit about the nafs when we get to it in a moment. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in verse number 28 tells us the response of Habil to his brother. The response. What did he say? When he was told that I'm going to kill you, what does he respond with? In the story he says, if you should raise your hand against me to kill me, I shall not raise my hand against you to kill you. If you do this to me, I will not do the same to you. Indeed, I fear Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Now, I know that some people, when they read this, they're thinking, well, why did he not want to, why would he not do this in self-defense? And it's interesting here that the Mufassirin, they mention that the niyyah of the brother is made plain and evident here. He's saying, if you're going to strike against me, I'm not interested in killing you. You are interested in killing me. You are interested in taking out your aggression against me. You're interested because you are jealous of me. But I don't have that same ill will towards you. I don't have that same ill will towards you. So I'm going to do what? I'm going to refrain from killing you in that instance. Right? And this is actually very, very powerful in some ways because he's making his intention known. He's saying, I don't have any interest in having you die. I don't have any interest in killing you off. And remember, this is the first time in humanity this has ever happened, that somebody would be killed or otherwise. But what he does say, he regrounds his brother. And he says that I fear Allah, the Lord of the worlds. This is not behavior that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants of us. So I'm going to refrain from doing that to you. And this is again, he's saying, I shall not raise my hand. Now, of course, some of the Mufassirin, they also mention that when the murder does happen, as it will, that Abel himself was actually asleep. He was sleeping in his bed when Qabil came and killed him. So he didn't even have the opportunity to raise his hand against him, to defend himself, if you will, against his brother. But what's very interesting, actually, subhanAllah, is the very next verse. Because he mentions here, if you should raise your hand against me and kill me, I will not do the same to you. So he's making it known, this is my intention, is not to kill you. Sometimes we operate from a place of hatred as opposed to a place of love or a place of compassion. He's operating not from a place of revenge or hatred. He's saying, look, I have no interest in killing you. You're my brother. That's not what drives me from within. But he does say the following. He says, indeed, I want you to obtain my sin, or the sin of killing me, and your own sin, so that you will be amongst the companions of the fire. What's he doing? He's doing, subhanAllah, when I was reflecting on this last night and doing the research on it, I thought about the strategic nature of what he's saying. The strategic nature. And what do I mean by that? He's not saying nonviolence just for the sake of nonviolence. He's saying nonviolence knowing that violent act is going to be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's being very strategic about this. He's saying, hold on, wait a minute. I'm not going to aggress against you. Now you've got the sin of killing me, along with the sin of committing murder itself. And you'll be amongst the companions of the fire. You do this, you don't have to worry about me. I'm not going to be in the picture anymore. But your own guilt, your own psyche, your own sin itself is going to lead you to hellfire. Right? And this is really, when you think about it, brothers and sisters, this is long-term thinking here. He's saying it out. And I was interested, remember reading, subhanAllah, about the civil rights movement under Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, rahmatullahi alayhi. And what was really interesting was if you read the writings of Dr. Martin Luther King, people oftentimes talk about him as being obviously this kind of the embodiment of nonviolence. His nonviolence was not pointless. His nonviolence was strategic. Gandhi the same way, by the way, in India. His nonviolence was strategic. He made sure that the acts of non-aggression, those nonviolence, were done in public settings. Were done in places where people could see the aggression that was being done against them. So it's not done in just like, I'm just going to sit back and let people take advantage of me. Even Abil here is saying, I'm not going to let you take advantage. You will have the sin of what you have done on me. Even though I'm not going to strike back. Even though I'm not going to do anything against you. Right? And we have to start thinking in these types of terms, brothers and sisters. Because we get very emotional. And we start operating from a place of emotion. We forget the strategy behind what are the acts that we're going to do. What are the strategies that we're going to engage. Even in nonviolence, there's a way to do it strategically. To show the violence of other people against you or against a people and turn the tide, if you will. And that's actually what happened even in the civil rights movement. You had all of these riots on university campuses that happened. And people started saying, how is this possible that the police force and everybody else is coming out against these people? Why don't they have the rights that other people do in this country? Right? And this is very, very important here. So what is Abil saying is, you can do this and just know that the sins will be on you for this. The sin will be upon you for this because you will be amongst the people of the hellfire. He's already, in some ways it's a warning to him, but he's also trying to get him to see, do you want to do this? Do you want to sacrifice your dunya for the akhirah? Or, excuse me, do you want to sacrifice your akhirah for some jealousy that you have in this dunya? Is that really what you want to do? Is that how you want to operate here? And he's reminding him that if you do this, that sin will be on you. The sin of killing me, and of having this intention of murder, of going about, that's going to be on you. And subhanAllah, he says in that, وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ الظَّالِمِينَ. This is the reward, quote unquote, or the payback for the wrongdoers. Hellfire. You don't have to worry about me. I'll be out of the picture. But you're going to have to worry about hellfire. Is that something you want to do? Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes that clear. That this is the end result of what He is purporting to do and wanting to do here. Now, what happens next? After Abel has made it very clear, I will not engage in violence against you. You can do the same to me, but I'm not going to do that. But I also am going to remind you that you're losing your akhirah for that. You are going to be amongst the hellfire for that. Right? So again, he's not doing this just to say, hey, he's reminding him, strategically, this is the long game. Then what does it say? فَتَوَّعَتْ لَهُ نَفْسَهُ. And his soul permitted him to do what? قَتَلَ أَخِيهِ فَقَتَلَهُ. To murder. The soul permitted him the murder of his brother. So he killed him, and فَأَصْبَحَ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. He became amongst the losers. Now the word that's actually used here, brothers and sisters, is his soul, nafsa. His soul permitted him to do that. And I want to take just a few minutes to talk about the soul, the nafs. Because the scholars, they have spent a lot of time in identifying the different categories of nafs. And we, as Muslims, we should recognize what this is so that we can work against the bad qualities of the nafs. By itself, the nafs itself, which is translated as kind of our soul has both the tendency towards good as well as the tendency towards evil. So the scholars, for instance, they talk about the very baseline nafs is called the bahimi nafs, the cattle-like nafs. This is the soul, the aspects of the soul that just need basic nourishment. They need food, water, right? They need intimacy. These are the things that are just required. These are the things that cattle do or animals do, right? They're only operating. They're not operating in a higher form of reason. They're just operating to survive. That what they call the bahimi nafs. This is part of the soul, right? And sometimes that animal-like nafs, if we, for instance, as one of my teachers once said, he's like, if we're overindulging in food, we're overindulging in drink, we're overindulging in these pleasures of this world, that's a sign that we're overindulging that part of our soul, that part of our nafs, that's become the paramount, the top. Then they also describe what they call a subawi nafs, a wolf-like nafs. This is a nafs that's trying to get ahead at the expense of others. It's going to go and try and put people down. It's going to cheat and steal. It's going to murder their brother out of jealousy. That's that nafs. So it's almost like this kind of, I'm just, they translate it as predatory. The predatory nafs. You're a predator. You're just out to get others. That's what you're doing. Then a kind of a category amongst that is the shaitani nafs. Now you're looking at just the nafs that's interested only in sinning and looking for opportunities to sin. But above all of that is a nafs that is angelic. What they call the malaiki nafs. This is a soul who's in comportment with the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. With the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands it towards good, that soul looks for opportunity towards good. And so what's interesting here is that the statement that's used is that his nafs allowed him to do this. Why? Because his nafs was not malaiki. The nafs of Cain was not an angelic nafs. He allowed his basal desires. He allowed those desires of jealousy, that predatory nafs to take over. And when it took over, it killed his brother. And that's the tendency that you and I have to work against. That's the tendency that you and I have to subdue. That we have to be in a moment of restraint at all times so that our soul is in line with what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what the scholars have identified, that a real life is one that is a God-pleasing life, where we put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, and we look to how to please Him. This is actually what Abel was doing. He was saying, I'm not going to strike my hand against you. That would be displeasuring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Instead, I'm reminding you that this sin is going to lead you to hellfire. But unfortunately, Cain's lower self took over. And out of this jealousy and this predatoriness, he went and he committed the very first act of murder that humanity has ever known. And then we'll see, inshallah ta'ala, as we get into the next few verses, what that did to him psychologically and what that did to him even physically, right, by committing this act of murder. We'll end here, inshallah ta'ala, for today. We'll pick up tomorrow with verse number 31. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the best in this world and the next world and protects us from the punishment of the fire. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants all of us forgiveness, that He forgives that He forgives all those who have died before us in faith, and erases from our hearts any ill feelings towards others. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us spouses and children that will be the comfort of our eyes and makes us leaders of the righteous. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects the people of Palestine, that He protects the people of Lebanon, that He protects the people of Yemen and of Iran. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects all of those innocent civilians that are being bombarded. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them shelter. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them victory. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises their ranks in this world and the next. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with all those who are oppressed all around the world, and we pray that He relieves those of their oppression, that He replaces their grief with exhilaration, and that He accepts all of those who have died as martyrs. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa barik wa sallimu tasliman kathiran kathira bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.